Starting my speech in three, two, one. Ladies and gentlemen, before I move on to how we should impoverish these corruptors, I firstly would like to say that if there's no impoverishment, corruption would exist and it will remain for as long as we don't apply this impoverishment. Ladies and gentlemen, if we don't impoverish these corruptors, these people who will think that they will be free, they will have the chance to do corruption. How so? Because they don't see any, they don't get any deterrent effect from watching other people who corrupt, and then they will think that, oh, corruption is okay because you will just get several jail time and then you're free to go out in the world again and do whatever you please, and that includes doing corruption again. Ladies and gentlemen, even if these people get put into jail, it will also create a new problem. Several things like such as bribery. Bribery happens a lot of time for people who have done corruptions, who were sentenced because of corruptions. They bribe the guards, they bribe the people who work in the jail so that they will get better facilities and get them easier to go out. And also their time in jail can also be bought. This can happen because of the what this is what will happen if you put corrupt people in jail. We need to know that corruption affects poverty, and corruption affects poverty big time from through declining economic growth, and then reduces investment, and then ruin the market and stifling the competition and a lot of and other things. Two responses to the opening opposition. Firstly, they mentioned that people who have done corruption and put in a rehabilitation program will become a burden to the state. We say no. Ladies and gentlemen, they won't be burden to the state, because if we impoverish them in the very first place, it means that we will take away all of their assets. And because we take away all of their assets, because we have taken away all of their assets, it means that we have the we must take care of these people, and they're not going to be the burden, because the state has already received back the money that they have stolen, with extra from the assets that they have, all the assets that they have. Secondly, second response is that the opening opposition mentioned that it will abolish threat of corruption. This is not true at all, which I will explain furthermore in my argument. Our mechanism here is what makes us different, is that we want to strip these corruptors away from all of their powers, their wealth, their assets, and not just for a few percent, not for a few percent more than what they have taken, but we want to take all of them and then put them in an empowerment program, then help them adjust to their new life. If there are a lot of empowerment program for, say, unemployed people, unemployed workers from the government itself, and these kinds of empowerment programs will give these corruptors ways to ways to start a new life, to start with a fresh to have a fresh start, where when also this corruption usually happens to people to politicians mostly. And we believe that these politicians have a good educational background, so that's going to be enough to give them a fresh start, to let them start anew and have other jobs through this empowerment program. And to my argument, I have three things. Firstly, how it is justified for these corruptors to be stripped away, to be impoverished, stripped away from their powers and wealth, Secondly, how it's going to be easier to track the money that they have taken from the corruption. And lastly, how it's going to be beneficial. And so my first argument, we believe that it is justified for these corruptors to be stepped away from their powers and assets. And it is also justified for their family as well, because these corruptors, whenever we ask them, why did you do corruption, it's usually they usually answer they most of the time answer that it is for the purpose of their for their family. And we believe that their family are very much well aware of what these corruptors are doing. And it is not only that it is wrong, but it is also a crime when someone knows something about other people who have done a crime but not act on it, and they can still be considered responsible for that crime as well, and in this case, corruption. Secondly, it's going to be easier to track the money from corruption because because when we take away all of their assets, it's going to be easier for us to see the cash flow that is moving. Where does the money go from when they received it until what that money has become, like an asset or like a house or transportation and so on and so forth. Lastly, how impoverishment is going to be beneficial. Three things, ladies and gentlemen. First thing, it's going to bring back what they have taken. Secondly, it's going to create a deterrent effect. And lastly, it's going to give more to the society. It's going to bring back because they have bring back what they have taken, the balance is restored. And then secondly, for the deterrent effect, it's going to create a sense for the society that to think that, if I would never do corruption because I don't want all of my things to be taken away from me. And lastly, for benefits of the society, there are going to be four things. The first one is there are going to be less corruptors because of the deterrent effect, and then better development for the nation as a whole. And lastly, we are going to build a program for these ex-corruptors, which is going to create a much, much better human being later on. So ladies and gentlemen, therefore, we are proud to propose. Thank you.
Going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay. If OG wants to play give and take, that's okay. You can do it, OG. But the status quo is already like that, and you can see that it doesn't give a very big deterrent effect. You can see that there's so many corruptors that still exist in the status quo. It's proven to be ineffective in the status quo. You cannot buy their proposals about give and take and taking the 150 assets that they are stolen and so on and so forth. But CG provides a better solutions by taking all of their assets. Therefore, we can easily do the check and balance, getting to know all of these hidden resources, like what OO already afraid of, and so on and so forth. Three things I'm going to talk about in my speech. Firstly, I'm going to talk about the exclusivity that brought by CG. Secondly, I'm going to talk about what happens in the family, for the family, because it's one of the biggest discourse that happened in this debate about how it will affect to the family, innocent people, and so on and so forth. And lastly, what makes us better than opening batch. Firstly, exclusivity of the CGs, right? In CG, we want to punish these corruptors in jail, of course. We want to still maintain those kind of sentence, right? And we also want to impoverish all of their assets, which makes us different from CG in this case, because CG only want to take 150% of the money that they took or they stole, and also the jail sentence and so on and so forth. This is a very ridiculous actually, because like what OO said, corruptors might have hidden money somewhere, or corruptors might have a big amount of money other than the money that are stolen. Just so you took 150 the money that are stolen, it means that they still have a lot of it. Probably they might have still so many assets behind that, which is which is why it might happen to not affect their financial and so on and so forth. It will just give a hit in this risk, like what they told before. And that's what they do, and that's what they perpetuate. This is why this is ridiculous. Then this is why CG can give a better solutions for and better sometimes punishment for this corruptions, right? And like we've told you, this hidden they corruptors might have hidden money or hidden assets somewhere, right? It is very hard to be detected in some way. So the way for you to investigate this cash flow or the flow of the money that they got or the assets that they are hidden behind that, in by confiscating all of their assets, therefore it's easier for you to investigate the asset behind the hidden one, or investigate where is this money that are being stolen flow, whether to another institution, to another person, for or even another company, and so on and so forth. This is why it's going to be easier for you to know the flow of the cash in itself, since there's a lot of branches of bribery in corruption cases, right? That's why it's very exclusive to CG to bring about our mechanisms about this. And second of all, what happens to the families, right? What happens to the family and judges? Note that if Op wants to talk about human rights and the impact of innocent people, especially small kids from the corrupted family, you cannot really buy that. You cannot just, it's very unjust. They are also vulnerable poor people whose life are relying on this tax that being taken away from them. They're relying of this money that subsidize their life, which is the one that are stolen by these corruptors, which is why you cannot buy the argument about human rights and also impacts of innocent people and also the families and so on and so forth, right? If the corruptors are aware of this impact for the vulnerable victim, and it can also happen to their family with our proposals of impoverishing these corruptors, they should not corrupt to begin with. There is what makes them, preventing them to do the corruptions and to do the crimes in itself, right? Because harming vulnerable people just to benefit your family is very immoral. But what will happen then to their families, right? Firstly, within that it's still okay for them to be poor. Why? Because they indirectly comply and be benefited from these benefits stolen by these corruptors, right? They live with their money, they have fun with this money. It's still considered a crime, just so you know, by criminal justice systems. That is why it's still okay for them to be poor. And second of all, they will still join the government empowerment programs, like what my member has already told you before. She told you how that the government already have so many empowerment programs, and this family can still join them since they're unemployed, and it feels justified for them to join it to get another job and so on and so forth, right? Note that state already provide a lot of trainings like that, such as prakerja. And to some extent, this family are also might be unemployed. Some of them might even employed. They can still join this empowerment programs and also these training programs, right? They're not going to be a burden because we took their assets, which is bigger than the money stolen, which is the trade-off for us and for them is going to be better and beneficial in our side as the government. And B, they usually come from the educated background, like this family or even the characters in itself, which means they can still work even without the power they got priorly, or even without the assets that they already have. They still can live their life to begin with. And lastly, what makes us then be better than opening badge? Firstly, on OG, we mechanize their case, particularly when they told you they want to aim for the normal life for these corruptors and also their families. They didn't tell us anything about it, and we mechanize and we explain what kind of normal life that we're aiming for. We answer all of the burdens put by about the hiding money and hidden money and such. We punish small and big corruptors with clear mechanisms about taking all of their assets and so forth. And secondly, from OO, what makes us better than them is that we tackle their main arguments about human rights and also punishing innocent people, and we solve the problems of financial and agency errors in and also burdens in our mechanisms. This is what makes us better than them for CG.